They served everyone steaks, desserts, everything. Everyone except me. I smiled, pretending not to notice, but inside, I felt the sting of humiliation. Every laugh, every toast, every shared joke reminded me that I was invisible. But I didn't react. I watched, I waited, and quietly planned my next move. The moment I acted, their arrogance shattered. What I did next stunned them all. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more shocking revenge stories. You won't believe how this one ends. A story of exclusion, patience, and the ultimate justice. I had always believed that family gatherings were about warmth, laughter, and connection. Even after marrying into a new family, I hoped for small gestures of kindness, moments that would make me feel like part of the group. But from the very first formal dinner, it became clear that I wasn't welcomed in the way I had imagined. It started subtly. Comments about my attire, the way I handled household duties, or my parenting style were wrapped in polite tones, but they carried a sting. I smiled politely, laughed when necessary, and tried not to let it affect me. But every word, every sideways glance, added weight to a growing realization. My presence wasn't valued. The first truly painful moment came during a family dinner at my mother-in-law's house. The aroma of cooked steaks and sweet desserts filled the room. Everyone's plate was piled high. Everyone, that is, except me. My seat was empty. Not just unprepared. It was as if my presence was forgotten on purpose. I glanced around, hoping someone would notice. My husband was deep in conversation, his attention elsewhere. My mother-in-law smiled politely at everyone but avoided eye contact with me. Laughter and chatter buzzed across the table, but I felt a cold isolation settle over me. They think I'm invisible, I realized, and the sting of humiliation burned sharply. It wasn't just the food, it was the message behind it. Every laugh, every toast, every shared joke was a reminder. I was excluded, deliberately overlooked. I felt the tension in my chest, a mix of shame and anger. I could confront them, but I knew that anger alone wouldn't solve anything. Patience, observation, and strategy had to guide me. Over the next few weeks, patterns became clear. Invitations forgot me. Comments were thinly veiled criticisms, and small manipulations became consistent. My mother-in-law took subtle pleasure in my discomfort, as if my silence confirmed her control. My husband, though kind, seemed unaware of the calculated nature of these exclusions. The first time I noticed photos being altered, my heart sank. Family events, birthday parties, holiday gatherings, photos that should have shown me and my daughter smiling, laughing, celebrating, had been subtly edited. Plates missing, faces cropped, my presence minimized or erased entirely. It was deliberate. My daughter, bright and lively at 8 years old, was being treated as if she didn't exist. I remember confronting my sister-in-law, holding a recent photo in my hand. "Why isn't my daughter in this picture?" I asked softly, my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. She smirked, a dismissive smile playing on her lips. "Oh, she probably wasn't really part of this one," she said casually, as if that excused the exclusion. Pretending not to be hurt was exhausting, but I couldn't allow their arrogance to see any cracks in my composure. That night, sitting beside my sleeping daughter, I made a vow. I would not let this injustice stand. I would document, strategize, and reclaim what was deliberately erased from our lives. I began quietly gathering evidence. Distant relatives, family friends, and even forgotten emails became allies in confirming the truth. Each photo, each message, each memory that contradicted their erasure became a tool in my arsenal. I documented everything meticulously, noting dates, times, and locations, ensuring that when the time came, the truth could not be denied. Every interaction with my family became a calculated observation. Their smugness, their confidence, and their manipulation, their underestimation of me. Each element added fuel to the plan. I smiled, listened, and played my part, all while quietly collecting proof and building a strategy for the ultimate confrontation. By the end of this period, the situation had crystallized. I understood their behavior fully, their patterns and arrogance clear. My path forward was no longer fueled by anger alone, it was guided by strategy, patience, and the power of undeniable evidence. I would confront them, yes, but I would do so in a way that left no room for denial, no space for rationalization, and no chance for dismissal. After that first humiliating dinner, my days became a careful balance of composure and quiet observation. On the surface, I continued attending family gatherings, smiling politely, engaging in light conversation, all while everyone assumed I was oblivious to their subtle cruelty. But inside, my mind was busy, cataloging every slight, every omission, every moment of exclusion. I knew that confronting them too soon would be useless. Anger alone could never restore what they had erased. Justice required patience, strategy, and evidence. I needed to prove the deliberate nature of their actions, and the best way to do that was quietly, methodically, and without letting them suspect a thing. I began reaching out to distant relatives who might have copies of original photos, those who had attended celebrations that had since been edited or altered. I explained the situation cautiously, careful not to reveal too much. Some were sympathetic, others hesitant. But eventually, several relatives shared what they had: a trove of photographs, some old letters, invitations, and even holiday cards. Each piece of evidence was a revelation. Photos of my daughter Emily laughing at her birthday party, playing in the yard, or holding a balloon. All of these had been altered in official family albums. Plates in group dinners where she had sat, smiling and talking, were carefully cropped, erased, or replaced. I held each original photo close, amazed at the deliberate care taken to remove us from the family's collective memory. I started compiling everything meticulously: dates, times, locations, witnesses, even casual remarks were documented. Each entry became a building block, a precise record of exclusion and manipulation. What had started as emotional pain began to fuel a strategic mindset. I wasn't just documenting cruelty, I was constructing the foundation for a reveal that could not be ignored. At the same time, the family continued their subtle manipulations. Comments like, "She probably didn't like the dessert anyway," or, "Oh, she wasn't really part of this one," were repeated with smug smiles. They assumed their arrogance went unnoticed. Each remark, each joke at our expense, reinforced their overconfidence, and in doing so, strengthened the eventual impact of my plan. Life at home became a space for reflection and planning. Nights were quiet, the hum of the city outside the window offering a backdrop to my thoughts. I watched Emily sleep, her little chest rising and falling, her innocence untouched by the cruelty surrounding her. How could anyone try to erase such joy? How could someone attempt to rewrite memories so deliberately? The injustice burned within me, but anger was harnessed, refined into careful preparation. I began practicing the timing and delivery of my eventual confrontation. It had to be precise, public enough for undeniable impact, yet controlled enough that I could remain composed and authoritative. The reveal could not be chaotic. It had to be irrefutable, dramatic, and satisfying. I also found allies in unexpected places. Some family members, unaware of the subtle exclusions, shared memories of events, confirming my suspicions. Their support, however quiet, reassured me that the truth could resonate beyond just Emily and me. These allies became an unspoken part of my strategy. The more I observed, the clearer the pattern became. Exclusion was not random, it was deliberate. Every edited photo, every whispered comment, every overlooked gesture was a calculated attempt to erase me and Emily from family memory. That arrogance, the belief that their actions would go unnoticed, would be their undoing. I spent hours arranging the collected evidence, comparing photos, cross-referencing dates, and creating a chronological record. Emails, messages, and holiday invitations were cataloged. Each document became a testament to the deliberate nature of their exclusion. I realized that patience was key. Acting too early would reduce the impact. The timing had to maximize the humiliation and disbelief of those who had wronged us. I visualized the family gathering, the placement of people, the timing of the conversation, the moment the evidence would be revealed. Every detail mattered. During this period, I also observed their psychological tendencies. They assumed dominance in social settings, believed they were always in control, and underestimated my awareness. That underestimation became a tool. Every smirk, every whispered joke, every glance of superiority fed into my planning. By the end of these weeks, I had transformed raw emotion into a calculated strategy. Humiliation and exclusion had been converted into the groundwork for justice. My anger was no longer reactive. It was deliberate, precise, and patient. Every minor insult, every overlooked gesture, every moment they tried to erase Emily was now a piece of a puzzle that would soon form a clear, undeniable picture. I was no longer the quiet target. They had created the perfect stage for the reveal, and I was ready to step into it. The tension was palpable, even for me. Each family gathering, each shared smile with strangers, each casual remark added fuel to the storm I was preparing. The quiet confidence that I maintained, the calm facade I projected, ensured that no one suspected the depth of planning behind my composure. Finally, the date was chosen for the confrontation. It would be a dinner where most immediate family members would be present. The setting, the timing, and the sequence of revelation had all been carefully planned. Nothing could go wrong. Every document, every photo, every note had been arranged to make the truth undeniable. By this point, I had learned a crucial lesson. Those who attempt to erase others often do so under the assumption that no one is watching. But patience, observation, and careful documentation can turn injustice into a weapon of truth. And that is exactly what I was prepared to wield. The days of quiet observation and meticulous documentation had led me to a single pivotal moment, the point where patience and strategy would meet action. I had collected proof, photos, messages, invitations, and eyewitness accounts that left no room for doubt. Every edited photograph, every slight, every exclusion became evidence, a testament to the deliberate attempts to erase Emily and me from the family's memory. But strategy required more than evidence. It demanded timing. I needed the perfect gathering, where the maximum number of witnesses would see the truth. It had to be public enough for undeniable impact, but controlled enough that the focus remained on the injustice and the revelation itself. I chose a weekend family dinner, intimate yet significant. Everyone important would be there, including my mother-in-law, siblings-in-law, and a few distant relatives who had no idea about the deliberate exclusion. I rehearsed the sequence meticulously. The reveal had to be calm, authoritative, and inescapable. I visualized myself walking in, greeting everyone with a polite smile, blending in just enough to avoid suspicion. I imagined presenting the first photograph, the subtle gasps, the disbelief, and then methodically revealing the full collection, letting each piece of evidence reinforce the last. Every rehearsal included responses to their expected excuses. I anticipated denials, feigned ignorance, and attempts to minimize the significance of their actions. Each response I imagined was countered with calm, factual proof. My plan left no space for deflection, no opportunity for rationalization, and no way for them to dismiss the truth. The family's arrogance was my ally. They believed that their manipulation would remain hidden, that my silence indicated submission. Their smug confidence, their underestimation of my resolve, made the eventual reveal even more powerful. Every smirk, every whisper, every sarcastic comment I had endured over the months was now a brick in the foundation of my strategy. On the day of the dinner, I arrived with a quiet confidence. I greeted everyone politely, blending seamlessly into the gathering while inwardly aware of the storm I carried. Conversations flowed, laughter filled the room, and the family remained oblivious to the tension that simmered beneath my composed exterior. They had no idea that the person they thought powerless had been quietly constructing an unassailable case against their cruelty. I waited for the right moment. As the meal progressed, I engaged in polite conversation, occasionally glancing at the subtle cues around the table, the smug smiles, the whispered remarks, the assumption that I was merely a passive observer. Each glance reinforced my certainty. This was the perfect moment. Finally, I asked to see a recent family photo, one that, in its altered form, had completely erased Emily and me. Holding the original in my hands, I presented it to the room, juxtaposing it against the doctored version. The silence was immediate and thick, a tangible tension that stretched across the table. Every pair of eyes focused on the images, trying to reconcile what they saw with the narrative they had maintained for months. Gasps filled the room. Some attempted excuses, others froze in disbelief. "Do you see the difference?" I asked calmly, my voice steady yet sharp. "This is the truth. This is what you tried to hide." Their reactions were priceless. Faces drained of color, eyes widened in shock, mouths opened and closed as the realization sank in. Every carefully maintained arrogance, every whispered insult, every act of exclusion was now laid bare, undeniable and public. I continued methodically, presenting each photograph, message, and piece of evidence in chronological order. Each revelation compounded the impact of the previous, creating a chain of undeniable truth. The family's smug confidence collapsed under the weight of irrefutable proof. I also highlighted Emily's presence in every unaltered photo. Her laughter, her bright eyes, her joy, moments they had tried to erase, were real, vibrant, and undeniable. She had existed in every memory they attempted to rewrite, and now the world they had crafted for themselves crumbled before the reality they could not hide. By the end of the reveal, the room was silent. Shock, guilt, disbelief, and anger intermingled in the expressions around me. They had underestimated me, underestimated Emily, and underestimated the power of patience, strategy, and truth. The arrogance that had fueled their cruelty became the very mechanism of their downfall. As I stepped back, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief and triumph. Months of humiliation, small manipulations, and deliberate erasures had been transformed into an unassailable victory. The patience and planning that had guided me ensured that justice was not only served, but delivered in a way that was impossible to deny. I had learned something critical. Those who try to erase others often do so believing no one is watching. But careful observation, meticulous documentation, and calculated timing turn injustice into a powerful tool for accountability. And in that quiet, dramatic moment, I wielded it with precision, restoring dignity to myself and to my daughter. The room was quiet, a tension so thick it seemed to press against the walls. Every family member's attention was fixed on me and the stack of evidence in my hands. I felt Emily's presence beside me, her small hand gripping mine tightly, a reminder of why this moment mattered so deeply. I began with the first photograph, a family gathering from a year prior. I held the unaltered original high enough for everyone to see. "This is Emily," I said, my voice calm but carrying the weight of months of preparation. "She was here, and she should never have been erased from our memories." Gasps echoed around the room. Some people froze, eyes wide as disbelief settled on their faces. My mother-in-law's expression hardened, a mixture of shock and the faintest hint of fear. Siblings and cousins who had participated in the subtle erasures shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unable to deny what they saw. I moved through the evidence methodically, showing each edited photo alongside its original. Birthdays, holidays, weekend outings. Each moment of Emily I.'s life that had been deliberately removed now confronted them with an undeniable truth. They had tried to erase her presence, her existence in the family's memory, and each revelation shattered the false narrative they had created. Some tried to speak, to offer excuses, but I anticipated their every move. Calmly, I countered with facts, dates, and witnesses. "This photo was edited," I said, showing another image. "This letter proves it, and this testimony confirms it. You cannot deny what you have done." The weight of months of humiliation and exclusion now fell squarely on them. Faces turned pale, hands trembled, and murmurs of disbelief began to ripple through the room. I could feel the power of patience and preparation coursing through me. The sense that justice was finally being served. Emily's presence became the centerpiece of the revelation. I held up images of her laughing, playing, and celebrating, her joy unaltered by their attempts to remove her. "She is real. She has always been here. And your attempts to erase her will not succeed," I said firmly. Tears welled up in some eyes, guilt etched across others. My husband, though previously unaware of the depth of the manipulation, looked at me with understanding and pride. He realized the magnitude of what had been done, and now, with the truth laid bare, he could not deny the cruelty that had been inflicted. The room was silent for a moment, everyone processing the scope of the evidence. Then, slowly, whispers of remorse and shock began to emerge. I didn't realize," one relative murmured. My mother-in-law remained frozen, unable to craft a response, her authority and control over the family shattered by the undeniable proof. In that silence, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not vindictive but righteous. Justice had been restored. The arrogance, cruelty, and manipulation that had been the family's armor were now exposed for all to see. For the first time, Emily and I were acknowledged, recognized, and vindicated. I allowed myself a quiet smile as I looked at my daughter. Her eyes, wide and curious, met mine, and I knew she understood, in her own way, that the world could sometimes be unfair, but that courage, patience, and truth could protect her. The aftermath was a mix of shock, apologies, and stunned silence. Some tried to rationalize, others fumbled for words, but none could erase the evidence before them. Every attempt to diminish or deny had failed. The control they had wielded over our lives was broken, replaced by the undeniable truth of justice and resilience. That evening, I sat with Emily later, watching her eat a small piece of dessert I had brought just for her. She smiled, unaware of the full weight of what had happened, but I knew she felt the shift, the subtle change that now ensured she could never again be invisible in her own family. I reflected on the journey, the humiliation, the quiet rage, the careful documentation, and the strategic timing. Every step had been deliberate, and every moment had been necessary to achieve the ultimate payoff. I had learned that patience, intelligence, and the courage to stand for what is right are more powerful than immediate confrontation. Justice had been served not through anger alone, but through careful planning, evidence, and unshakable resolve. And the family, once smug and dismissive, now had a clear understanding of the consequences of underestimating those they sought to erase. For me, the lesson was clear. Protect your loved ones, document injustice, and never underestimate the power of patience. The world may try to ignore you, erase you, or humiliate you, but truth, when wielded with precision, cannot be hidden. Sitting quietly with Emily, I realized how much strength I had gained. The betrayal had been painful, yes, but it had also revealed the depth of my own resilience. Protecting my child was non-negotiable, and standing up for our place in the family had been both terrifying and empowering. I wanted the audience to understand. Exclusion, humiliation, and manipulation can feel overwhelming, but patience, preparation, and courage allow even the most oppressed to reclaim dignity and justice. The impact of truth is undeniable, and the consequences of cruelty are inescapable. They tried to erase us, but the truth couldn't be hidden. If you loved this story, like, share, and subscribe for more true revenge stories where courage and patience always triumph.